Hello, I'm Bernard Hickey from interest.co.nz and welcome to a housing report. Today we look at figures from Barfoot and Thompson on sales and prices in Auckland. Now, Barfoot and Thompson is obviously the biggest real estate agency chain in the country, and in particular in Auckland, the biggest market in the country, and it releases its results before the results we see from the Real Estate Institute and from Quotable Value. So it's interesting to see what's just come out of the housing market. Barfoot and Thompson report sales in July of 998. It's up from 994 in June. And that's the first time since 2005 we've seen the number of sales increase in July from June. Obviously, middle of winter, people tend to sell less properties. That number, 998, is also up 28% from a year ago. So there's obviously plenty going on in the market at the moment. And looking at the average house price, that's risen to a record high, $591,444 in July. That's up 0.4% from June, doesn't sound like much, but up 11.5% from a year ago. Let's have a look now at what happened to that average price in recent years in Auckland, and you can see a significant upward trend, particularly from 2001 onwards to 2007 or so. Then we saw it come off its peaks, stabilise through 2009 and 10, and we're off to the races again through this year. And you can see it's peaked right up there at close to $600,000 on average in Auckland in July. And you can see here the numbers sold, not quite so much growth over those years. In fact, we're still below the sorts of levels we saw through the real boom time 2002 to 2005, but certainly an increase from those lows of the beginning of last year. So a significant increase in activity in the housing market. And looking at what's happening in the market, Barfoot and Thompson report that the numbers of buyers out there, they are acting decisively. However, Barfoot and Thompson says that prices aren't spiralling higher. Interesting though, that 82 houses were sold in July for more than $1 million. That's up 64% from last year. And when you look at some of the detail on where these price rises are happening, it's clear it's in the what I'd call the villa suburbs of Auckland. The central suburbs, going around from Herne Bay, Ponsonby, Mount Eden, Epsom to Remuera and Parnell. Their prices are up 17.5% from a year ago. Then we look at the eastern suburbs, so looking at the likes of St Heliers, up 25.9% average prices. It's not spreading all around Auckland, but it's starting to spread out. Now, West Auckland prices up 4.7%, and Pakuranga Howick only up 3.8% from a year ago. But South Auckland up 24.8%, and North Shore up 9.4%. So the heat started in the centre of Auckland, not the exact centre, because the apartment market's still pretty flat. In fact, prices have fallen there. But it's radiating out from the centre of Auckland, or as it often does. Now, why are we seeing such strong price rises in Auckland? Well, low interest rates are a factor. They've been down here at their record lows now since the beginning of last year, and certainly in the last 4 or 5 months there's been significant activity. The banks are competing hard for business. We also see plenty of migrants coming into Auckland. They always come to Auckland from the rest of the world, but also from Christchurch, where there's a fair amount of insurance money chasing a few houses down here. A good chunk of the housing stock in Auckland was taken out in the last 4 or 5 years. Leaky buildings built between 1990 and 2005 or so. And we're simply not building enough new houses. Only 2,500 new homes are being built in Auckland every year at the moment. And that needs to be closer to 10,000 to 13,000 to cope with the population growth we've got. So what's going to happen? Well, the Productivity Commission has given its report to the government on what needs to be done to try and improve the number of houses and therefore improve housing affordability, particularly for those lower cost houses. And we're expecting a government response sometime in the next couple of months. There's going to be a lot of talk about land supply, and it's interesting to hear some of the rhetoric coming from the Finance Minister, Bill English, talking about the need for councils to work harder to get consent costs down and make land supply more available. So there we have it, the first cut on the July housing market. Pretty strong in Auckland, prices up 11.5% on average overall through the region from a year ago. I'm Bernard Hickey. That was a housing report from interest.co.nz.